All right, welcome. Today we are going to be talking about Google Calendar. I'll also be talking to you about Google Forms a little bit later in the presentation. Google Calendar is very convenient because it syncs very well with all of the things that we do at Quest Academy on, Google Chrome. So Google Calendar helps you to keep track of all your events. You can share your calendar with others. You can sync your calendar with your phone or tablet, which is really why I love Google Calendar, because I can always, just check my phone calendar and see, oh, I've got a meeting at school scheduled at that time. I can't have a concert that time. Or, oh, I have a parent, conference at this time. I have to make sure that my class, will have enough prep time before that. So you can also set reminders for upcoming events, and that's for both your students, your parents, and you. And you can also launch video conferences right from Calendar. So this is all Google Calendar. I wanted to make a note before we start that I use two separate Google Calendars. I have one for my personal life, which is completely not attached to my Quest Academy calendar. And then I have one that's only used for Quest events. Some people like to merge the two. Some people like to have just one on their phone. But I just wanted to say I recommend you have two separate Google Calendars, one with maybe your regular email if you use Gmail, or even if you don't, you can still use Google Calendar, and one for school. Just makes things a little bit easier. You can color code them as well if you merge them together. So the first thing I thought would be the most useful is how to add video conferencing to your Google Calendar. Um, we've been using Zoom and Google Meet for the last few months, and maybe many of you have used it before then as well. But when you're using that, the first thing you want to do is you want to go into your calendar. So there's lots of ways to get into your calendar. You can go to your 9 dots and you can find your calendar there is one of the easy ways to get into your Google Calendar. So when you're in there, there's lots of options. You can change the view. I like the monthly view, but you can do weekly if that works better for you, and it gives you a very clear kind of set right there. You can also do a daily view. So if you have lots of conferences on conference schedule day, you can put them all in, and then instead of running around, you can just look at your screen and say, next one is here, or I'll come back to that one. You can do it for the whole year if you like, and a lot of people like the 4-day schedule. So the 4-day calendar. So you can kind of decide what view works best for you. The next thing that I wanted to just mention is how to create an event. So let's say that tomorrow let's say I wanted to make it for Friday, and I wanted to make it a specials meeting where all the specials teachers were invited, and this would be an event. You can put in the date right here. And let's say that I want to add Google Meet video conferencing. So you can just click right on there and it will add in a conference code for you. When you send this, when you add your guests, and let's say I wanted to add Lisa Dionis, and let's say I wanted to add all of our different specials teachers, and I would just go through one at a time and add each one in there. Then what you can do is the link will be shared with them. So it's just a nice, easy way to create an event that way, and to add your video conferencing. Now, when you go into here, your meeting ID also comes up. So you can change your meeting ID if you don't like what that one says, you can change it, but you can also copy and paste this if you need to put it onto like onto your Google slideshow or anything else. You can also add it that way. So that is just an example of adding an event. I'm going to discard those changes so Lisa doesn't get that. And that was just an example of how to add a meeting with Google Meet. So another one I wanted to show you, let me just jump back to my slideshow to make sure I didn't miss anything. That was adding Google Meet. You can create it. You can add event details, add guests, location, conferencing, description. You can also, when you save it, you can decide whether they're going to get an email right then. And you can also send them a reminder, which is something I like, so that, whenever Donna sends me a meeting for Google Meet, she always says, you'll get it 10 minutes before, and my calendar dings and I get the reminder beforehand. So just some ways that you can use this Google Meet in your conferencing. So again, just a quick review, create, and then you want to click on this blue button which says add Google Meet conferencing, and it will just automatically create that for you, put it on your calendar, and it will send it to the other people you'd like to as you go through there as well. You can see there's more options. You can add in whoever you want to put in there, and it will send the email to them. So those are just some examples of things to do with Google Meet.
Just a
And
question
so,
really quick, and
yes,
you know how, and maybe you're going to go through this. Maybe I should wait. Maybe I'll wait.
no, ask first, just so I
It
make sure.
was, so you had multiple calendars on your um, on your calendar.
Yeah.
Have you found an easy way to organize that? I just find like that I can never remember what calendars with what. And I saw that you had a blue dot for
Yeah.
the calendar.
One of the reasons why is because when you use Google Classroom, it imports these automatically, all these different classes. So what's happening is you might have created a nice calendar that works well for you, and then all of a sudden Google Classroom's like, bam, you've got all these music classes that are also being added in, old ones are added in. And so those are just, you have to go through and sort of organize what things you want to show up. I like everything to show up in there, and I get rid of old Google Classrooms so I don't have to have those on there as well. But it puts everything on your calendar, and you can choose which calendars you want to display on here.
True.
So if I don't want anything from Google Classroom displayed at all, I can just unclick all those, and it will only be the things that are my my actual schedule type things.
Did you create a different color for each of these ahead of time, or they give you automatic
They
ones?
gave it to you. It's kind of based on what color your Google Classroom is.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So, and it makes it nice when they put it on here because you can change the color. Like I change the colors for these ones. You can edit and you can change the color right here of what color you want it to be.
Hmm.
But it will just give you, it tries to make your calendar kind of visually pleasing overall as well for your whole month. And then you can kind of see with the little dots what's happening. Okay, so that was a little bit of that. And then I wanted to show you, let me just jump back here, how to add Zoom. So when I was researching this a little bit, because I've got one way of doing this, and I always like to check that I'm doing it the simplest way and not just the most convenient way that I was doing it. So there's actually an add-on in Zoom that I thought about adding, and then I thought I don't want to confuse people. So just so you know, there is a little bit easier way than the way that most of us probably add our Zoom meeting. But if you go into your profile in Zoom and you go into meetings, here's one that I just put in there to make it a little bit easier. Let me just move some of these things out of the way for you. Okay, so when you have, let's say I had a specials meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Okay, this is not a real meeting. If you're a specials teacher, don't worry. But one thing that you can do is if you would like to add this meeting when you schedule the meeting, it gives you an option. I think, Bernice, when you were doing this, you saw this as well. To schedule the meeting, you can put it onto your Google Drive, onto your Google Calendar as well. The Chrome plugin. And here it's telling me this. Schedule your Zoom meetings directly from Google Calendar with this Chrome plugin. So you can download that and that will put it right on there. But another way to do it is if you have your code, what am I missing here? And I just scheduled the last one onto here, but you can actually take this Google meeting that you've got here and you can put that meeting, you can share that.
I think it's once you press create meeting, then it gives you the option.
Then it gives you that option, right? Okay, so if I've just got my meeting and I go to
Yeah,
save,
then it's going to give you the option, I think.
then it gives me right here, add to Google Calendar, and you can click on that one, go into your account, and you can actually see, you have to allow it to like access your whole life. But then you can put it into your Google Calendar as well. And here, you don't want to do the add Google Meet. It actually put it in here as your Zoom, and down here, it has added that to my calendar. And I can add which guests. So if I wanted to do like the whole Tigers class, you could put in the Tigers class and it will put it in there. You can also use that link on your Google Classroom as well. So Bernice, is that the way that you do it, or do you do it a different way?
I don't use Google Calendar with my second grade class because we don't let them check their email.
Right. So that might be something like for third or fourth grade that you might want to use for older kids. You might just want this link to put in where you put it in as well, and you can decide whether or not password that they went over in Zoom.
I did it for parents though, because some parents really, because they had multiple kids, they needed to connect my meetings, my live meetings to their calendar so they can remember for their child as well. And so I would send them Google Calendar invites the way that you just did.
Okay, got it. So that's just an example of how to check that out for Zoom if you're using Zoom for your conference or for your meetups. So you can put that on your calendar, makes it a little bit simpler. And then finally, how to add Google Classroom to your Google Calendar. So when you're in Google Classroom, we've all added assignments in there, but sometimes getting the ins and outs, I'll just go to it this way. Sometimes getting the ins and outs of how you want to add something is also a little bit tricky. So if you go into your classwork tab and you want to create a new one, let's say you're making a quiz assignment and we'll title it How to Use Google Calendar. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to go to this due date, and under the due date, let's say that this is due, it says tomorrow, but let's say it's due Friday. You can pick a time if you want a time before noon. And that actually places the assignment now onto my Google Calendar. And I like that function because it can also put it onto all of the students' calendars, and then the students can reference that, and they can find all of their assignments and when they're due in one place. So if when you put that on there, I know Lisa Dionis uses that, I know Laura Nadeau uses it, and then they expect their students to check their calendars and see which assignments are due on which days. And the students can actually go into here, here's their Google Calendar, they can reference it from Google Classroom, actually see all of their assignments as well.
Did you have to, Amber, did you have to link them to the Google Calendar ahead of time, or does it automatically do it already?
It just does it. It's all set up and it's all ready to go. It makes it super easy. And Laura's here. Laura, you use that with your students, right? I believe some of the kids have even told me. Oh, that's fine. So that's just an easy way to use Google Calendar as well, and keeping those due dates on there and making sure that the students know where they are and when they're due. If you always add a due date to assignments, then the students will see theirs as well.
Yeah, we do a lot at the very beginning of fifth grade with we start out with paper calendars, and it's all tied in with estimating how long they think it's going to take them to do each homework assignment, and then sometimes they time their homework assignments to say, I cried and moaned and estimated it would take me 2 hours, but it really took 40 minutes, and you know, on the opposite. So it's a combination of time management and assignment management, so that when they get to middle school, they're at the beginning of being able to look at all the assignments from all the different classes and look at their calendar and talk to their parents and consider their personal schedule at home and figure out whether they should be working ahead in a big assignment and for how long and that kind of stuff. So they do eventually get to, some of them really grab onto Google Calendar.
Yeah.
And I would say at least half of them still go through Google Classroom every day to get to it.
Yeah, I think if we do distance learning again, I think, you know, maybe grades 3, 4, 5, it's useful for parents, it's useful for kids just to at least be able to access that. And you don't have to do anything else for the teachers except put in a due date, and it adds it to their Google Calendar. So just, you know, us all knowing that that's something that we could add, I think will make it a lot smoother for students as well.
And I do have to say, it really, really helps me, because before we were doing this, I was putting my lessons in Google Calendar so I could, because I need help keeping track of everything. And it's really nice as I'm planning, okay, this week on Thursday and Friday, I'll do this. I go to put it in on Thursday and I see, whoa, the kid who was sick last week, I already promised he could present this day.
Right.
So it helps me. And they have a big assignment due in their other classes. I mean, I put the other classes on my calendar too.
That's nice. Yes. And, you know, if we were all to use that, special teachers could see there's a test coming up in this class, there's a performance coming up in this class, and, you know, we could just, you know, kind of plan our days more effectively.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on now, I wanted to add in Google Forms because there is so much to Google Forms that I think would be really, really helpful. And this doesn't even mean for distance learning. This is for, in-person learning as well. If we go back and, people are able to use Google Forms more effectively, I think it would just help us all a lot. So a Google Form is simply a list of questions that you create, customize, and send out in order to gather responses. You can use Google Forms in the classroom for quizzes, surveys, reflections, or anytime you need to collect data. I love Google Forms to the point where I use it like all the time. I wanted to put in a Google Form here just to have you guys survey it as well, but I thought keep it cool. Okay, so how do I start a Google Form? And I said, let's get this party started. So you go into your Google Drive and you click on New and More, and then you select Google Forms. So I'll just show you how to do that. Anytime you want to find a Google form, you can go to your 9 dots. It is purple. So if you're looking kind of for which one is, you can just find it here and it's purple. So when you open that up, you can use lots of different templates and things, but if you just want to start easy, you can start with a blank form. And when you open it up, I'm guessing on our staff, some people have come to this screen and then said, this is too much, and then they've backed away from the screen. But I just want to encourage you to keep going forward and don't give up here. So let's say that you're making an important quiz about how to use kind of anything you can think of, whatever your topic is for that week. But let's say that we're talking about pets and we want to survey how many people are using, have pets and are using different training techniques or anything like that. So I'll just say agility training, maybe for your dog. Okay, so the first thing that I would recommend that you do is you want to add name. And when I made my first Google form, I didn't do this. And then I really, really regretted it as the answers started coming in and I was like, what's happening? So add name and hit required and it'll give you short answer automatically. So that is all you need to do to create the name part of your quiz or worksheet. I'm going to call this one a quiz. And one way you can make it a quiz and make it all smoothly sync, especially for Google Classroom, is go to quizzes and say, make this a quiz. That one button will save you a ton of grading and a ton of just going back and getting a lot of statistics on what you've created. So I would say click on that one, and I say immediately after submission, that's the default. Okay, so save that up, and now you've started and you can go in any direction you want. I like this because it really just adds some possibilities. So here's an example of a quiz that I made. Each time you want a new question, just press the plus and you can get a new question. So here's one that I made called High and Low Sounds. It was one of the first quizzes that I gave right as we started distance learning, and you can put in images. So if you didn't know that you could add images to Google Form, it's very easy to add. You can just go right here, add image, click on that, and you can type in, I usually go by Google image search. There's not a ton of things in there, but if you wanted, let's say we were doing different types of dogs, you can choose one and you can put it in right there and it'll come in and you can size it. So that's just an example of what you can do. So I found these online. I didn't actually make these, I can, but I found it easier to just say what direction are the notes moving? Are they moving upwards? Are they moving downwards? Are they staying the same? So that's just an example of how to make a very simple Google form. I'm just going over here. And another example of how to do it is you can add YouTube clips. So let me just jump to the top of this one. So this is the brass instruments. And you can just say something as simple as name this instrument or name this shape, like anything you want. And the students go through and they name the shapes. But what I liked about this Google form was I put in listen to this instrument. And I put in examples of listen to this video. And then what instrument did you hear? So if you actually have them listen to the videos and then answer it, it makes it like a little bit more interactive. And I think the students really enjoy that as well. And it's super easy to add those in as well. They have a button where you just click on add video. And you can add video. Let's say, again, if we were using our pet example, we could say dog barking or dog agility training. Let's say that we were doing that. And you can search for that. and you might find the video. I would really recommend that you peruse exactly what you want to show. Make sure it's the right length, make sure it's completely school appropriate before you add anything to a Google form. You can change the timing on it, but just be real careful on the videos that you choose. And then they can say, what did you hear? So that's just an example of making a very simple Google form, but adding a little bit of multimedia to make it fun. And when the responses start pouring in, it gives you a lot of data. So it gives you all of their email addresses of who replied. It gives you their name, and it also tells you which numbers they answered correctly. And I liked that. Usually if, a lot of people are getting one incorrect, it's often that, I don't want to say you haven't taught it well, but maybe you haven't taught it as clearly as you'd like to or gone over it enough if that many students across the board have no idea on the Google quiz. And that kind of helps my teaching as well. I know which things to go back and review the next day. You can look at an individual. So if I want to see how Hanya did, I can just go through her quiz real quick and say, oh, trombone. That's definitely not a trombone. So I'll need to just review that with her as well, and check that out. So just examples of how to make a quiz and how to make it, kind of age level appropriate and things like that. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and come back over here and just check in. Any questions? Yes, Laura.
So how did you get 76 responses if you're giving that quiz to multiple different classes? How do you keep your classes straight?
Sometimes I do them on different days. So as I went through, that was kind of one of my very early quizzes. Later on in distance learning, I would call it brass instruments tigers, or I would call it,
Okay.
so I did it by class, and you can just make a copy so I don't have to do
Okay.
anything extra. Sometimes I like them all together because then it's just one place I can go to grade it, and it's so easy to search for who, it looks like 76, like that's an overwhelming number, but it's so easy to look at the email. I actually found it easier than I started combining it into one quiz again.
Yeah.
And
You
then
could even make a question that just says what class are you in, and they could put tigers or
exactly. You
yeah.
can add that as well, but because
Okay.
your email and your name and our school, it's pretty easy to figure out who's who. That worked as well. So
And have you ever used any year over year?
I haven't. I like to kind of recreate them because the YouTube videos keep changing.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful if you add images or, specifically YouTube videos, they do get, there's certain ones that you can't use that next year, or, you want to check them. So
Yeah.
if you're using any video clips, I would remake it or at least really check it very closely. But
Okay.
the basic format, like if it was for a social studies unit and, things were generally staying the same, that might work really well.
All right. Thanks. That's helpful.
Sure.
I wanted to ask, and this is a little off topic, but has anyone used the question option on Google Classroom before?
Yeah.
I really, and I haven't used it, so I wanted to bring it up since we're talking about forms. Laura, you've used that question option. Do you know, and if it's okay if I share my screen really quickly,
Sure.
and you can kind of add in, do you know if you can add more than one question at a time?
Yes.
You can.
Yeah. You can. I've added 6 at one time.
So do you just, because I saw if you do a question, you can do like a multiple choice question and then add options. How would you add another question?
I would just start over the same way I add another assignment.
So it would be multiple questions in a row.
Multiple questions is how I've been doing it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I was just curious about that since we were talking about forms. If Google Classroom had come up with a form just using this create option, but it seems like you can just do the quiz assignment and then just throw in your form anyways.
Well, right, exactly. Or you could just, if you wanted it to be a question, not an assignment, and you had multiple questions you want to keep all together, if you made it on a form, then you just link the form to that question.
Right, and that actually is a great lead in because that is what I wanted to show next with this Google form, which is how to get, if you're a specials teacher and you have 76 assignments coming in 1 week on that one topic, and you've got 4 topics that you're teaching them that week, and each class after that is going to have their own things, you're going to want to streamline it a little bit and find a way to get everything graded. So let me jump into my Google Classroom right here, and let me just show you really quickly how to add your quiz into a Google form. So if you go in here to classwork and you create a quiz assignment, make sure you go to quiz assignment and not assignment, because if you want it graded a specific way, you can actually add in from your Google Drive. I'm going to add in that high and low sounds right here, and then you can easily you've got to just change a few features on it to make it come out just right. So you can add this one in, but take out the blank quiz. And the reason why is because now grade importing will be on, and grade importing will actually grade the quiz for you, put their assignment into Google Classroom, make it all kind of align. It's like the stars line up, and magically every student's assignment on that part of it is graded. Now, if you have an essay in there, if you have any kind of short answers, it's a no-go. Works the best if you have all multiple choice questions and you want it graded in seconds. And the reason why is it's kind of one of those quick assessments. It's one of those that, you know, you can ask very detailed questions, but everything's going to be either multiple choice or, you know, or some kind of quick answer that Google Forms can grade for you. Then I changed my point value to the same point value. Usually I use 25 for a lot of things. Point value that it was, and when it comes in, it will all be graded and it will all be completed like that. And when they have their grades, for example, well, I'll just jump to here for now, but it will actually give you their graded assignments, and they can see it in Google Classroom. And so that's just one thing I loved the most about Forms. And I'll come back here to you. Did that make sense? I'm guessing, how many of you use the Google Forms assessment part in Google Classroom where it will actually grade it and send it back? Yeah. So, I mean, I love that. And if you've got multiple classes or multiple subject areas, it sure makes it easy. Yes, Laura?
I almost never have a Google form that is all multiple choice. So
I was thinking of you.
But it's just as easy. So let's say I have 10 questions and 7 of them are multiple choice.
Right.
And then the other 3 are short answers or longer things or whatever. Then when I go into my spreadsheet of responses, I can just read only those 3 columns. It's not bad.
It's not bad, but the magic of the other way, I mean, it's
Well,
what I often do is I give them the multiple choice on one day, and then I give them a separate short answer on another day, so that one assignment's graded and done, and they're all like, you know, how'd you get that into me in seconds? I'm like, done. And then the other one is, you know, kind of the more thought-provoking one, or like a listening example where they have to reflect on it. Well, that I'm going to have to grade and talk it through individually with each kid, and why did this make you feel a certain way? You know, there's just different kind of ways, but the magic of that Google form with multiple choice has been really a lifesaver for me with so many classes and going in so many directions. And you can really give you immediate feedback if a kid's just not getting a topic at all. And so that's what I like.
Yeah, kind of like a math class exit slip or something.
Exactly.
I can see that.
It's great for exits.
So do the kids see their score in the grades that you're teaching?
Yes, I give all grades back immediately, as fast as I can. I mean, I'm sending it back as it's just flying back and forth between me and them. And I always, at least so far for distance learning, have done the, they can review it, retake it, send it back to me. I don't care how many times they're retaking it. I want them to get it. And then often if somebody's retaken it more than 3 times, I have a second quiz that I'll give them. So it's not just them memorizing 5, 3, 1, 4, 2 and answering it back. I have just, you know, and it actually does that in Google Form. It can resort it in a new method so that when you give it back to them or change the wording, you can just put in different words, different examples, and see if they understand the content. So
that works too, to make sure they don't have the questions in the exact same order as their neighbor.
Exactly. Okay. Or that, you know, one kid doesn't just post a list of what the answers
are.
I do change them up a lot.
Right. That was very helpful.
Annabelle,
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.